The grand chamber of Veltros Prime stretched so high that clouds formed near its ceiling. Thousands of alien beings filled the massive space, their bodies ranging from floating gas clouds to armored insectoids, the size of small buildings. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert hundreds of languages into comprehensible speech. At the center of it all stood a single human woman, alone at a podium that seemed far too exposed. Ambassador Minji kept her hands clasped behind her back, a habit from her military days. She wore a simple gray suit, no decorations or intimidating armor like some of the other species favored. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and her expression remained calm despite the hostile energy rolling through the chamber like a physical force. She had been standing there for 3 hours, while species after species denounced humanity. The Velkari matriarch towered over the assembly floor on her elevated platform. Her 6 eyes gleamed like polished obsidian, and her voice carried the weight of authority earned over 2 centuries of life. She was currently listing humanity's crimes against galactic order, and the list was impressively long for a species that had only joined the community 15 years ago. They expand without permission, the matriarch declared, her translator giving her voice a sharp, cutting quality. They establish colonies in quarantine zones. They build weapons that violate 3 separate treaties. They refuse to limit their reproduction rates. They ignore safety protocols that every civilized species follows without question. Minji had heard all of this before. The accusations were not entirely unfair. Humanity had been aggressive in their expansion. They had pushed boundaries, questioned rules that seemed arbitrary, and generally made themselves unpopular with the established powers. But from humanity's perspective, they were simply doing what was necessary to secure their future in a galaxy that seemed determined to keep them contained in their home system. A Colarian delegate rose from his seat, his crystalline body refracting light in rainbow patterns. "The humans are dangerous," he said, his voice ringing like wind chimes. "They adapt too quickly. They learn too fast. They survived first contact with the Drexian plague, which should have sterilized their entire colony on New Taipei. Instead, they weaponized it within 6 months. This is not natural. This is not how civilized species behave." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Minji made a mental note of which species seemed most hostile. The Colarians were expected. They had lost a trade dispute with human merchants 2 years ago. The Velkari were traditional isolationists who viewed any newcomer as a threat. But there were others, species she had thought were neutral, now joining the chorus of condemnation. The matriarch raised one of her 4 arms, calling for silence. "We have deliberated for months. We have reviewed the evidence. We have given humanity every opportunity to explain their actions and modify their behavior. They have refused all reasonable limitations. Therefore, I call for a vote. The motion before this assembly is simple. Humanity must be contained by force before they become a threat to galactic stability." Minji felt her heartbeat quicken, but her face remained expressionless. This was the moment they had been expecting, even preparing for. Earth's diplomats had war-gamed this scenario dozens of times. But knowing it was coming did not make it easier to watch hundreds of alien species prepare to vote on whether her entire civilization should be subjugated or destroyed. "Before we vote," a voice boomed from the military observer section, "I request permission to address the assembly." Every being in the chamber turned toward the source of the interruption. Military observers were not supposed to speak during assembly sessions. They were there to watch, to report back to their governments, nothing more. But the figure rising from his seat commanded attention simply by existing. General Kovacs of the Threxian Empire stood nearly 3 meters tall. His 4 arms were thick with muscle, and his exoskeleton bore the scars of countless battles. The Threxians were one of the most feared military powers in the galaxy. a species that had never lost a war in their 1,000-year history. Next to him, looking small by comparison, but no less imposing, stood a human in military dress uniform. "This is irregular," the matriarch said, but her voice carried uncertainty now. The Threxian Empire commanded respect, even from species that disliked them. "Observer Kovacs, you have no standing to address this assembly." "I request an exception," Kovacs replied, his deep voice requiring no translator. He spoke Galactic Standard with the confidence of someone who had negotiated treaties and surrender terms on 100 worlds. "I have information relevant to this vote. Information that could prevent a catastrophic mistake." The matriarch's eyes narrowed. What information could a military observer possibly have that this assembly does not? "Experience," Kovacs said simply. 5 years ago, the Threxian Empire stood where you stand now. We identified humanity as a potential threat. We analyzed their expansion patterns, their military capabilities, their aggressive tendencies. We reached the same conclusion you are about to vote on. We decided that humanity needed to be dealt with before they grew stronger. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background noise of translation devices seemed to pause. Minji kept her expression neutral, but inside she was racing through implications. She had not known about this. Earth's intelligence services had suspected the Threxians had surveyed human space, but they had no evidence of active planning for military action. "So you understand our position," the matriarch said, leaning forward with interest. "Your empire reached the same logical conclusion." "Yes," Kovacs agreed. "We reached the same conclusion. But we had an advantage you do not. We sent scouts to Earth itself. We studied humanity in their natural environment. We learned what they truly are." He paused, and for the first time since Minji had known him from diplomatic functions, she saw something unexpected in the massive warrior's demeanor: fear. "We learned why containment is not just inadvisable. It is suicidal." The matriarch's expression shifted from interest to irritation. "You expect us to believe that a species barely 15 years into galactic society represents an existential threat to civilizations that have existed for millennia?" "No," Kovacs said. "I expect you to listen to what happened when 12 of my finest soldiers, equipped with our best technology, attempted covert reconnaissance on a world you call Earth. I expect you to understand what it means that humanity evolved on a Class 12 Deathworld. And I expect you, after hearing what I have to say, to realize that voting for war against humanity is the last mistake your civilizations will ever make." He turned to the human standing beside him. "General Tai Yang commands the human frontier forces. He has agreed to provide evidence, biological data, and testimony to support what I am about to tell you. But I will start with a simple story. A story about what happened when the Threxian Empire tried to do exactly what you are planning." The matriarch hesitated. Around the chamber, delegates were conferring with each other in hurried whispers. Finally, she gestured for Kovacs to continue. "Very well. The assembly will hear your testimony. But make it quick, General. We have a vote to conduct." "This will not be quick," Kovacs replied, "because once you understand what Earth is, what it does to the life that evolves there, you will need time to reconsider everything you think you know about humanity." Minji watched as the massive alien warrior walked to the center of the chamber floor. General Taiyang followed, his human frame looking almost fragile next to the Threxian. But Minji knew better. She had seen Taiyang's service record. She knew what humans were capable of when pushed. And as Kovacs began to speak, describing his species' first real encounter with Earth, she felt something she had not expected to feel in this hostile chamber. She felt hope, not because the testimony would make the other species like humanity, but because it might make them afraid. And sometimes fear was more useful than friendship. General Kovacs stood at the center of the grand chamber. His forearms spread in a gesture that the translation software interpreted as openness and honesty. His scarred exoskeleton caught the light as he turned slowly, making sure every delegate could see him clearly. When he spoke, his voice carried to every corner of the massive space. "How many of you have visited Earth?" he asked. The question hung in the air. Delegates looked at each other, confusion evident in their body language, regardless of species. A few hands, tentacles, and appendages rose hesitantly, then lowered again. No one wanted to admit to visiting the human homeworld, not in this political climate. "I thought so," Kovacs continued. "Most species avoid Deathworlds. They are expensive to visit, requiring specialized equipment and extensive safety measures. They are dangerous, even for short visits. And they are, frankly, unpleasant. Why would you go to such a place when there are thousands of garden worlds with perfect climates and friendly environments?" The Velkari matriarch shifted impatiently on her platform. "Get to your point, General. We know Earth is classified as a death world. This is not news." "You know it is classified as such," Kovacs agreed. "But I do not think you understand what that means. A Class 12 death world is not simply a harsh planet. It is a planet that actively tries to kill everything on it. Every day, every moment, survival is a fight against the environment itself." He activated a holographic display that materialized above the chamber floor. The image showed Earth from space, a blue and white sphere that actually looked quite beautiful from a distance. Gasps and murmurs spread through the assembly. Many had never seen humanity's homeworld before. 5 years ago, Kovacs said, the Threxian High Command identified humanity as a potential threat. We had been watching their expansion, monitoring their activities, analyzing their behavior patterns. Everything we saw suggested a species that would eventually challenge Threxian interests in this sector. So we made a decision. Before humanity could become strong enough to resist, we would gather intelligence for an invasion. He let that sink in. The admission of planning aggression against a galactic community member was serious, but the Threxian Empire was powerful enough to make such confessions without fear of consequences. That was the benefit of being a military superpower. You could admit to planning wars that never happened. I led the reconnaissance team personally, Kovacs continued. 12 soldiers, the best the Threxian military could provide. We had technology that could make us invisible to most sensors. We had weapons that could neutralize threats without leaving evidence. We had survival equipment rated for Class 8 environments. We thought we were prepared for anything. The holographic display changed, showing a map of Earth with a highlighted region. We chose to land on the Korean Peninsula during their winter season. Our intelligence suggested moderate population density, developed infrastructure, and strategic value. We planned to observe human military capabilities, identify weaknesses, and return with actionable intelligence for invasion planning. General Tai Yang, standing beside Kovacs, maintained a neutral expression, but Minji could see the hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. She knew what was coming. Every human who had served in the military knew the stories about first contact incidents, about alien species learning the hard way that Earth was not like other worlds. We landed at night, Kovacs said. The temperature was -15 degrees in human measurements. Our environmental suits were rated for -50. We should have been comfortable. Within 1 hour, 2 of my soldiers were suffering from hypothermia. Their suits were functioning perfectly, but the cold was so intense, so penetrating, that our technology could not fully compensate. The holographic display now showed a mountainous landscape covered in snow. We discovered that humans live in this environment, not temporarily, not in protective domes, but permanently. They build homes, raise families, and go about their daily lives in temperatures that would kill most galactic species within hours. A Calarian delegate interrupted. Surely they have heating technology. Any species can survive cold with proper technology. Yes, Kovacs acknowledged. They have heating. But we watch children playing outside in this weather, wearing thin layers of cloth. We observed elderly individuals walking through snow without protective equipment beyond simple coverings. What requires emergency survival gear for most species is, for humans, slightly inconvenient weather. The display changed again, now showing a small village nestled in the mountains. We encountered a human settlement. One of the buildings was occupied by a single elderly female. Our intelligence suggested elderly humans would be weak, easily frightened, ideal for preliminary observation. We approached her dwelling and attempted to initiate contact. Kovacs paused, and something that might have been embarrassment crossed his alien features. Her name was Hannah. She was 78 years old by human reckoning. When we entered her home, she did not scream or flee. She offered us tea, a beverage. She saw 12 armed aliens in her home and offered hospitality. Nervous laughter rippled through some sections of the assembly. The image of an elderly human offering tea to alien invaders had an absurd quality that cut through the tension. We declined her offer, Kovacs continued. We attempted to intimidate her, to extract information about human military installations. She listened to our demands. Then she walked to a storage area and retrieved a weapon. A primitive chemical propellant rifle, technology that most species abandoned centuries ago. She demonstrated her accuracy by shooting a target across the room. The projectile moved faster than our sensors could track. Her aim was perfect. The laughter stopped. The display now showed a detailed scan of a human hunting rifle, with annotations highlighting its destructive capability. This elderly female, living alone in a remote location, had the training and equipment to kill any of us instantly. She chose not to, but the message was clear. On Earth, even the old and isolated are dangerous. Kovacs began walking slowly around the chamber floor, his voice taking on a rhythmic quality, like a teacher explaining a difficult concept. We withdrew to observe from a distance. We needed to understand human society, human capabilities, human weaknesses. What we discovered changed everything the Threxian Empire believed about warfare and survival. The holographic display began showing a series of rapid images. Humans running up mountains, swimming in oceans, climbing sheer rock faces, engaging in combat sports, diving from cliffs, skiing down slopes at dangerous speeds. Humans engage in these activities for recreation, Kovacs explained. For fun, for entertainment. What you are seeing is not military training. These are civilians choosing to put themselves in dangerous situations because they find it enjoyable. A delegate from the Peaceful Luminar Collective stood up, her bioluminescent body pulsing with confusion. That makes no sense. Why would any species deliberately seek danger? The purpose of civilization is to escape the dangers of nature. That is the purpose for your civilization, Kovacs agreed. But humans evolved on Earth. Earth taught them different lessons. They learned that danger makes them stronger. They learned that challenges are opportunities. They learned that comfort is temporary, but adaptation is permanent. He gestured to General Tai Yang. The general here regularly runs 20 kilometers before his morning duties. He does this by choice, for health and wellness. 20 kilometers. Most species need transportation to cover such distances. Humans do it for exercise. The display changed again, now showing humans eating various foods. They consume substances that are technically poisonous. Capsaicin, alcohol, caffeine. They ingest these for pleasure, despite the fact that they cause pain or altered states of consciousness. Their bodies are so resilient, so adaptable, that they can process toxins as entertainment. Kovacs's voice grew more intense. We watched their military conduct training exercises. What we saw would be classified as torture by galactic law. They subjected their own soldiers to extreme temperatures, food deprivation, sleep deprivation, and physical punishment. This was not cruelty. This was preparation. They were training their people to survive conditions that most species cannot imagine enduring. The Valkyrie matriarch's expression had shifted from irritation to concern. General Kovacs, are you suggesting that human military capabilities exceed our estimates? I am suggesting, Kovacs replied, that you have no framework to understand what human military capabilities truly are. Every human is a potential soldier. Every human has been shaped by a planet that kills weakness without mercy. Every human carries the adaptations of a Deathworld predator species. He turned to face the matriarch directly. My reconnaissance team spent 6 weeks on Earth. We gathered more data than we could process. And at the end of those 6 weeks, I returned to Threxian High Command with a simple recommendation. Do not invade Earth. Do not threaten humanity. Do not start a war with a species that thinks suffering builds character. The chamber erupted in conversation. Delegates argued with each other, questioning Kovacs's testimony, demanding proof, insisting that one general's opinion could not overturn logical strategic analysis. But Minji noticed something important. The ones shouting the loudest were also the ones whose hands were shaking. Fear was spreading through the chamber like a virus. Not fear of human technology or human numbers, but fear of something more primal. Fear of predators that had learned to build starships. The Grand Chamber gradually quieted as General Kovacs raised one of his massive arms. The gesture commanded attention in a way that words alone could not. When silence finally returned, he continued his testimony with the methodical precision of a military report. But underlying every word was something that delegates were not used to hearing from the mighty Threxian Empire. Humility, born from genuine terror. After our encounter with the elderly human Hana, my team relocated to a forested area approximately 50 kilometers from the nearest human settlement. We established a concealed observation post and began systematic intelligence gathering. Our mission parameters were clear. Identify human military capabilities, locate strategic resources, map infrastructure weaknesses, and assess civilian morale. Standard reconnaissance procedures that the Threxian military has executed successfully on hundreds of worlds. The holographic display shifted to show dense woodland covered in snow. The trees were tall, their branches heavy with white powder that looked beautiful from a distance, but had proven hostile up close. Within 3 days, we lost another soldier, not to human action, but to Earth itself. He stepped on ground that appeared solid, but was actually concealing a vertical drop. He fell 12 meters into a ravine. His armor protected him from the impact, but the cold water at the bottom induced shock so rapidly that we could not revive him. A simple environmental hazard that humans navigate daily without technology became lethal to a fully equipped Threxian soldier. Kovacs paused, letting the implications settle. We began to understand that our enemy was not just humanity. It was the planet that made them. Every element of Earth seemed designed to kill careless life. The weather changed without warning. The temperature could drop 20 degrees in a single hour. Water fell from the sky in solid form, accumulated on surfaces, made travel dangerous. And the humans? They called this a light snowfall, and continued their activities without concern. The display now showed thermal images of human settlements. Even through walls, the heat signatures of human bodies glowed bright against the cold background. We observed a small human town. Population approximately 3,000 individuals. We expected to see a society stressed by survival conditions, people huddling indoors, minimal activity during the dangerous winter period. Instead, we saw children playing in the frozen precipitation. We saw adults traveling between buildings with minimal protective gear. We saw a celebration where humans deliberately went outside at night in sub-zero temperatures to observe decorative lights and socialize. A ripple of disbelief moved through the assembly. Several delegates were consulting their data devices, presumably checking the environmental ratings for Earth to confirm that Kovacs was not exaggerating the conditions. During the 4th week of observation, we attempted to infiltrate a human military facility. A minor installation, just a regional defense coordination center. Our intelligence suggested minimal security, a small staff, low-priority target. We thought it would be simple to observe their operations, copy their data, and withdraw undetected. General Tai Yang stepped forward slightly, and Kovacs gestured to him. The general has graciously allowed me to describe what happened next, despite the embarrassment it causes my pride as a military commander. Tai Yang's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held a glint of satisfaction. We entered the facility using our phase shift technology. This equipment makes us invisible to most known sensor systems and nearly undetectable to biological observers. We had used this technology successfully in operations against 17 different species. We did not expect humans, with their relatively primitive sensor technology, to detect us. The holographic display now showed a security station with multiple monitors. A single human sat at the console, a man of middle age with graying hair. His name was Hyan. He was a civilian security contractor, not military personnel. He had no advanced training in counter-stealth operations. He was, by galactic standards, an ordinary human performing a routine job. He noticed us within 4 minutes of our entry. The Kolarian delegate who had spoken earlier stood up again. Impossible. Threxian phase shift technology is undetectable without specialized equipment. How could a single civilian identify multiple concealed soldiers? He did not detect our technology, Kovacs explained. He detected our behavior. Humans evolved as both predators and prey on Earth. They developed an instinct for noticing when something is wrong in their environment. Hyan could not see us directly, but he noticed small things. A door that opened slightly when no one appeared to touch it. A shadow that fell wrong. Air movement that did not match the ventilation patterns he knew. His mind, shaped by millions of years of evolution, recognized threat patterns that his conscious awareness could not articulate. The display showed Hyan reaching calmly for a communication device and speaking into it. Within seconds, armed human soldiers began responding to his location. He activated the facility's alert system without knowing exactly what the threat was. He trusted his instincts over his rational mind. This is a very human response. Their brains are wired to detect danger first and understand it later. It kept them alive when Earth was trying to kill them every moment of every day. Kovacs's voice grew quieter, and every delegate in the chamber leaned forward to hear better. What happened next demonstrated something more frightening than human instinct. It demonstrated human persistence. The holographic display shifted to show a 3-dimensional map of the facility and surrounding area. Red dots represented the Threxian soldiers. Blue dots represented responding human security forces. We withdrew from the facility immediately. Standard protocol when a covert operation is compromised. We expected the humans would secure their facility and wait for backup. We expected they would treat this as a security breach requiring investigation. We did not expect what actually happened. The map animation began to move, showing the red dots fleeing while blue dots pursued. They chased us, not with vehicles, not with drones, but on foot, through forests, across rough terrain, in darkness and snow. We ran for 3 hours straight. 3 hours. My soldiers were equipped with advanced armor, enhanced physical conditioning, and emergency stimulants. We were being chased by humans in basic combat gear. The animation showed the gap between pursuers and pursued slowly closing. After 2 hours, we were still ahead. We thought we had escaped. But the humans did not stop. They did not slow down. They maintained their pursuit pace with mechanical consistency. One of my soldiers collapsed from exhaustion. We had to carry him. The humans kept coming. General Taiyang spoke for the first time, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. Persistence hunting. Humans evolved to chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. We are not the fastest species on Earth, but we are the most relentless. We can run for hours, days if necessary. Our cooling system allows continuous physical exertion that would cause other species to overheat and die. It is not pleasant for us, but we can do it. Kovacs nodded. We were forced to use emergency extraction. We called for pickup, breaking every protocol about maintaining operational security. We could not outrun them. We could not lose them. They tracked us through methods we still do not fully understand, following traces we did not know we were leaving. When our shuttle arrived, they were less than 1 kilometer behind us, still running, still pursuing. The display showed the Threxian shuttle lifting off with human soldiers arriving moments later, too late to intercept, but not exhausted, not defeated, just delayed. That night, Kovacs continued, I sat in our orbital ship and reviewed the data. I tried to understand what had happened. We had superior technology, superior physical strength, superior tactical training. But we had been defeated by humans, using nothing more than their evolved biology. They did not give up. They could not give up. Earth had programmed surrender out of their genetic code, because anything that gave up on Earth died. He turned to face the full assembly, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of complete honesty. I have fought in 30 campaigns. I have led troops against hostile species on 12 different worlds. I have personally killed enemies in numbers I do not care to remember. But that night, chased through Earth's winter by humans who would not stop, I felt something I had not experienced since I was a young soldier in my first battle. I felt prey. The chamber was absolutely silent. Even the background hum of translation devices seemed muted by the weight of Kovacs's words. We spent 2 more weeks in orbit, observing Earth from safety. We compiled our data, analyzed human society, and drafted our recommendations. Every finding pointed to the same conclusion. Humans are dangerous not because they are numerous, not because their technology is advanced, not because they are particularly cruel or warlike. They are dangerous because Earth made them into something that cannot be stopped, only delayed, only discouraged, but never truly defeated. Ambassador Minji watched the reactions spreading through the assembly. Some species looked skeptical, but many more looked thoughtful, worried, calculating the implications. The Valkyrie matriarch had remained silent throughout this portion of testimony. Her 6 eyes fixed on Kovacs with an expression that might have been respect or might have been horror at the Valkyrie. Matriarch rose from her elevated platform, her 6 eyes blazing with barely controlled anger. Her voice cut through the silence like a blade, sharp and precise. General Kovacs, your testimony is dramatic and well delivered. But it proves nothing except that your reconnaissance team was poorly prepared for a Deathworld environment. You have shown us that humans are adapted to harsh conditions and that they are persistent. This does not demonstrate that they are an existential threat to galactic civilization. Other delegates murmured agreement. The tension that had built during Kovacs's testimony began to dissolve into skepticism. Stories were one thing, but the Galactic Assembly made decisions based on evidence and data, not on the fears of a single military commander, no matter how respected. You demand proof, Kovacs said calmly. Scientific evidence rather than combat reports. This is reasonable. He turned toward the human delegation. Ambassador Minji, would you be willing to submit to biological examination by the Assembly's scientific experts? Minji stepped forward from her position at the human delegation podium. She had known this moment was coming, had been briefed on exactly what would be revealed, but that did not make walking to the center of the chamber floor any easier. Every eye, lens, and sensory organ in the vast space focused on her. She was one human standing before thousands of alien beings, about to have her biology dissected for political purposes. "I volunteer," she said simply. Her voice steadied. The matriarch gestured to the assembly's medical section. "Dr. Wellness, you are our senior xenobiologist. Please conduct the examination and report your findings to the assembly." Dr. Wellness descended from his observation platform with obvious eagerness. He was a Kolarian, his crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into rainbow patterns as he moved. He had built his reputation studying hundreds of species across the galaxy, documenting their evolutionary adaptations and biological systems. He approached Minji with the confidence of someone who had never encountered a puzzle he could not solve. "Ambassador, please stand still while I conduct the scans. This will not hurt, though you may feel slight tingling as the sensors gather data." His translator gave his voice a melodic quality. Pleasant and professional. Minji stood motionless while Dr. Wellness circled her with various scanning devices. The equipment hummed and beeped, feeding data to holographic displays that materialized around them. At first, the doctor's movements were quick and efficient. Then they began to slow. He recalibrated one of his instruments, scanned again, recalibrated once more. His body language shifted from confidence to confusion. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. He pulled up a holographic display showing a skeletal structure. "Your bone density. It is absurd. These readings suggest your skeleton could withstand impacts that would shatter a Kolarian into fragments. Are you wearing some kind of reinforcement technology?" "No," Minji replied. "That is natural human bone structure. Earth's gravity is heavier than most garden worlds. Our bones evolved to handle the constant stress." Dr. Wellness made a notation and moved on to cardiovascular scans. His confusion deepened. "Your blood pressure, the force your heart generates. This would rupture the vessels of most species I have studied. How do you not suffer constant internal bleeding?" "Our cardiovascular system evolved to support persistence hunting," General Taiyang interjected from his position beside Kovacs. "We needed to maintain blood flow during extended physical exertion. High pressure, reinforced vessels, multiple redundant systems." The doctor was now scanning Minji's muscular structure, and his melodic voice took on a strained quality. "The density of your muscle fibers, the efficiency of oxygen processing, the concentration of mitochondria in your cells. This suggests physical strength far beyond what your body mass should allow. Are all humans built like this, or are you specially enhanced?" "All humans," Minji confirmed. "Some variation based on genetics and conditioning, but yes, this is normal for our species." Dr. Wellness stepped back, his instruments still scanning and recording. He pulled up multiple displays simultaneously, comparing human biology to galactic standards. The comparisons painted a picture that clearly disturbed him. "Your immune system. It is in a constant state of active warfare. You have billions of microorganisms in your body right now that are attempting to harm you, and billions more that you maintain in symbiotic relationships. Your cellular defenses are engaging in lethal combat every moment of your existence. This level of biological warfare is only seen in species from Class 10 Deathworlds or higher. Earth is a Class 12 Deathworld," Kovacs reminded everyone. "Everything on it is trying to survive in an environment designed to kill. Humans did not just survive this. They thrived in it." The doctor was now examining scans of Minji's eyes and sensory systems. Forward-facing eyes. Binocular vision optimized for depth perception and tracking movement. These are predator adaptations. Prey species have eyes on the sides of their heads to watch for threats. Predators have eyes facing forward to target prey. He moved to dental scans. Your teeth. They are designed for tearing flesh. Not exclusively, you clearly have omnivorous adaptations, but these incisors and canines are predator dentition. The Velkari matriarch leaned forward on her platform. Dr. Velness, are you suggesting that humans are a predator species that achieved sapience? That is extremely rare. Most intelligent species evolved from prey animals that developed cooperation and tool use to survive. Predators rarely need the same social complexity. I am not suggesting it, the doctor replied, his voice now carrying a note of something between awe and horror. I am confirming it. Humans are sapient persistence predators. They evolved the most dangerous combination possible: the physical capabilities of an apex predator and the cognitive complexity of a highly social species. He brought up a new scan, this one showing Minji's brain structure, the size of the brain relative to body mass, the complexity of neural connections, the ratio of processing power dedicated to physical coordination versus abstract thinking. Humans have brains capable of advanced mathematics, philosophy, and art, but they never lost the predator instincts. The ancient parts of their brain, the parts that govern survival responses, are still fully active and integrated with their higher reasoning. Dr. Velness activated a chemical scan showing hormonal systems. Adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol. Humans have a stress response system that temporarily enhances physical capabilities during threatening situations. For a brief period, they become stronger, faster, more resistant to pain, with enhanced reflexes and sensory processing. They can override their body's safety limiters and push themselves beyond normal operational parameters. This is a combat drug system, a delegate from the Hivener Collective called out. You are describing biological combat enhancement that most militaries achieve through external chemical supplementation. Yes, Dr. Velness confirmed. Except it is built into their bodies. It activates automatically under stress. Every human is carrying a combat enhancement system that triggers naturally when they perceive danger. He turned to Minji, his crystalline body flickering with colors that his species displayed when experiencing strong emotion. How do you survive daily life with these adaptations? How do you maintain civilization when your biology is optimized for hunting and killing? Minji considered her response carefully. The entire assembly was watching, waiting for her answer. We have emotions like empathy, compassion, love. We have cultural systems that channel our aggressive tendencies into constructive purposes. We have laws, ethics, and social bonds. Yes, we are predators. But we are also more than that. Earth made us dangerous, but we made ourselves civilized. Civilized predators, the matriarch said, her tone making it clear she found the concept deeply troubling. Dr. Velness, in your professional opinion, what would happen if humanity faced an existential threat? What would happen if we voted to contain them by force? The doctor was silent for a long moment, studying the biological data that surrounded him like an accusation. When he spoke, his voice carried absolute certainty. If you threaten human survival, every single adaptation I have just documented will activate. You will not be fighting a civilized species trying to maintain diplomatic norms. You will be fighting Deathworld predators in survival mode, with all the physical and psychological enhancements that evolution gave them. Their adrenaline will override pain and fear. Their persistence will prevent retreat. Their pack bonding will turn every human into a willing sacrifice for their species' survival. He looked at the matriarch directly. You asked for scientific evidence. Here it is. Humans are biologically optimized for survival in conditions that would kill most galactic species. They have the physical resilience of prey animals, the hunting instincts of predators, and the cognitive complexity of social beings. They are the only species I have ever studied that combines all three evolutionary paths into a single organism. If you start a war with them, you will be fighting an enemy that literally cannot give up because surrender is not programmed into their biology. The chamber erupted into chaos. Some delegates shouted denial, others demanded additional tests, and more than a few were already calculating the implications for their own species and territories. But Ambassador Minji stood at the center of it all, calm and composed, a living example of exactly what Dr. Wellness had just described. A Deathworld predator wearing the mask of civilization, the Velkari matriarch called for order repeatedly, her voice growing sharper each time until the chamber finally quieted. The chaos that had erupted after Dr. Wellness's testimony gradually subsided into tense silence, but the atmosphere had fundamentally changed. Fear had entered the grand chamber, settling over the delegates like a physical presence. "Dr. Wellness," the matriarch said, her 6 eyes fixed on the crystalline scientist, "your findings are disturbing, but they only confirm what we already suspected. Humanity is dangerous. They are biologically optimized for violence and survival. This is precisely why containment is necessary before they can threaten the stability of galactic civilization." Dr. Wellness shifted uncomfortably, his body refracting light in patterns that suggested distress. "Matriarch, with respect, I am not certain you understand what I have just documented. These are not simply aggressive beings that need to be controlled. These are Deathworld survivors with intelligence and technology. Containment would require force. Force would trigger their survival responses. You would be creating the exact situation that their biology is designed to overcome. Then what do you suggest?" The matriarch snapped. "We allow them to expand unchecked? We wait until they are powerful enough to dominate the galaxy? We ignore the threat because it might be difficult to address?" Before Dr. Wellness could respond, General Kovacs stepped forward again. "If I may, matriarch, I have not yet finished my testimony. I described what the Threxian Empire learned about humanity. I have not yet described what we did with that information." The matriarch gestured impatiently for him to continue. The entire assembly was now focused on the massive Threxian general, waiting to hear how one of the galaxy's most powerful military civilizations had responded to the human threat. "After my team returned from Earth," Kovacs began, "we presented our findings to the Threxian High Command. Our recommendation was clear: do not invade Earth. The cost would be unacceptable. But the High Command faced the same question you now face. If we do not contain them now, what happens when they become stronger? What happens when they control dozens of systems instead of just a few? What happens when their fleet matches ours in size?" He paused, letting the questions hang in the air. "We debated for months. Some commanders advocated for immediate overwhelming force, a first strike that would cripple humanity before they could respond. Others suggested we wait and observe, hoping they would destroy themselves through internal conflict. But one of our strategic analysts asked a different question entirely." General Taiyang moved to stand beside Kovacs, and the Threxian general gestured to him. The analyst asked, "What do we gain from war with humanity? Their systems have resources, yes, but nothing we desperately need. Their technology is innovative but not beyond our reach. So what is the actual benefit of destroying them, compared to the cost of fighting Deathworld predators who refuse to surrender?" A delegate from the Peaceful Luminar Collective spoke up, her bioluminescent body pulsing with curiosity. What was the answer? What did the Threxian Empire decide? "We decided to try something the Threxian Empire had rarely done in our 1,000-year history," Kovacs replied. "We decided to negotiate, not from weakness, but from pragmatic calculation. If humans could be made into allies rather than enemies, we would gain their Deathworld adaptations as an asset instead of facing them as a threat." He activated another holographic display, this one showing various joint Threxian human projects. For the past 5 years, the Threxian Empire has maintained a peaceful partnership with humanity. We have exchanged technology, established trade routes, and conducted joint military exercises. And I will tell you what we have learned from this cooperation. The displays showed humans working on hostile planets, in extreme environments, solving problems that had challenged Threxian engineers for decades. Humans work on colony worlds that we classified as too dangerous for settlement. They terraform environments that would kill Threxian workers within days. They do not simply survive these conditions, they thrive in them. What is impossibly hostile to us is merely challenging to them. Another display showed joint military operations. Human tactical advisors have revolutionized our combat doctrine. They think differently about warfare because Earth taught them different lessons. They find solutions that our strategic computers never considered because those solutions require accepting levels of risk and sacrifice that no rational civilization would choose. But humans are not entirely rational. They are shaped by a planet that punished rational thinking and rewarded desperate innovation. A medical display appeared, showing research facilities. Human medical knowledge has saved thousands of Threxian lives. They understand disease and immune responses in ways we never did, because they spent their entire evolutionary history fighting microscopic enemies. What took our civilization centuries to learn through research, humans learned through survival necessity. General Tai Yang spoke, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The Threxian Empire made a calculation 5 years ago. They asked what they would gain from destroying us. The answer was temporary security and permanent loss of potential benefits. They asked what they would gain from working with us. The answer was everything that Deathworld evolution gave humanity applied to mutual interests. The Velkari matriarch's expression had shifted during this testimony. The absolute certainty she had displayed earlier was cracking, revealing uncertainty beneath. So the Threxian Empire chose profit over security. You gambled that humans would remain peaceful partners. How can we know that gamble will pay off? You cannot know, Kovacs admitted. Peace is always uncertain. But war with humanity is certain. Certain cost. Certain casualties. Certain destruction. Even if you win, even if every species in this assembly combines their forces to destroy the human worlds, what remains of your civilizations afterward? How many worlds burn? How many billions die? How many centuries of progress are lost? He walked closer to the matriarch's platform, looking up at her with all 4 eyes. I have fought wars, matriarch. I have won battles and conquered worlds. I know what victory looks like. And I am telling you that victory against humanity, even if achievable, would look like defeat. They would make you earn every meter of space with blood and fire. They would turn every planet into a fortress. They would fight with weapons, with biology, with improvised solutions that your military planners never anticipated. And when you finally won, you would rule over ashes and graves while your own civilization bled from wounds that would take generations to heal. Ambassador Minji stepped forward to join Taiyang and Kovacs at the center of the chamber floor. 3 beings from 2 different species, standing together before an assembly that had gathered to vote on humanity's fate. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried an edge that reminded everyone listening exactly what Dr. Velness had discovered in her biology. We did not ask to be born on a death world. We did not choose to evolve as predators. Earth made us this way, and we cannot change what we are. But we can choose what we do with what Earth gave us. We can be your enemies, or we can be your allies. The choice is not ours to make. It is yours. She gestured to the assembly around her. If you vote for containment, for war, we will respond as General Kovacs described. Not because we want to, but because our biology will not allow surrender. We will fight until we win or until we are extinct. That is not a threat. That is a simple statement of fact about how Deathworld species respond to existential danger. But if you vote for peace, for integration, we will prove that civilization can tame Deathworld instincts. We will show that predators can cooperate. We will demonstrate that humanity is more than just survivors of Earth's horrors. We are also scientists, artists, engineers, diplomats. We are everything that evolution made us and everything we made ourselves. The chamber was absolutely silent. Every delegate was making calculations, weighing risks, considering possibilities. The Velkari matriarch looked at the data surrounding her, the biological evidence, the testimony from one of the galaxy's most respected military commanders, the simple truth standing before her in human form. The Assembly will vote, she finally announced. The motion before us is containment of humanity through military force. Consider your choice carefully. We are not voting on whether humans are dangerous. That has been established beyond doubt. We are voting on whether we prefer them as enemies or as partners. The voting process took 2 hours as delegates consulted with their home governments, debated among themselves, and calculated the implications for their own species. Minji watched the tally develop on holographic displays, her expression neutral, but her heart racing. This was it, the moment that would determine whether humanity's future in the galaxy would be built on cooperation or written in fire. The final count appeared, and the chamber fell silent. The motion for military containment had failed, not by a small margin, but decisively. 2/3 of the Assembly had voted against war. Fear, pragmatism, hope, and simple calculation had combined to give humanity a chance. The Velkari matriarch rose one final time. The Assembly has spoken. Humanity will be granted full membership in the galactic community, subject to monitoring provisions that will be reviewed in 10 cycles. This session is concluded. As delegates began to disperse, many approached Minji and Taiyang. Some offered congratulations, tinged with obvious nervousness. Others expressed hope for future cooperation. A few simply wanted to satisfy their curiosity about the Deathworld species that had just been accepted as galactic citizens. General Kovacs approached them as the chamber emptied. "You did not tell them everything, did you?" he asked quietly. Taiyang smiled slightly. "No, they know we evolved on a Deathworld. They do not need to know we are still shaped by it every day, that we take our Deathworld instincts with us wherever we go." "Perhaps that is wise," Kovacs agreed. "Let them learn gradually what it means to have humans as neighbors. Sudden understanding might be overwhelming." Minji transmitted a message back to Earth to the United Nations Colonial Administration, reporting the Assembly's decision. She added a personal note to her superiors. Humanity had been given a chance. Now came the harder part, proving they deserved it. Proving that Deathworld predators could be trusted members of a civilized galaxy. On Earth, in the same mountain village where a Threxian reconnaissance team had learned their first lesson about humanity, the elderly woman Hana sat in her home drinking tea. Her grandson Jinwoo had sent her a message about the Assembly vote, about humanity's acceptance into the galactic community. She smiled, remembering the night 5 years ago when strange beings had appeared in her home, and she had offered them hospitality before demonstrating that hospitality should never be mistaken for weakness. Outside her window, the mountains stood eternal and uncaring, the same mountains that had witnessed humanity's entire evolution from scattered tribes to spacefaring civilization. Earth had made humans into survivors. Now they would show the galaxy that survivors could also be builders, partners, friends. But they would always remain survivors first. That was the lesson Earth had taught, and it was a lesson that no amount of civilization could fully erase.